So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to NTU. Welcome to School of Chemistry, Chemical Engineering, and Biotechnology. I'm Mihaiela Stuparu, or Ella. All my students and everybody calls me Ella. It's easier. And congratulations. It looks like you fulfilled the first requirement to be one of our students. Can you guess which one it is? You all sit in the back. Nobody's in front. I promise I don't bite. So if you want to come closer, I feel like there's a C somewhere in the back, but congratulations. You fulfilled the first requirement to be our students. And today, I'm going to tell you about polymers and polymers that we see all around us. So actually, I'm going to start by making a very, very bold statement in saying that I think at least a third of you have made a polymer once in their life. I'm pretty sure of that. And then to motivate you to share, for the first one that tells me how and when they made a polymer in their kitchen or in their home, I have a tumbler made, guess what, of polymers. So anybody wants to share? Anybody wants to guess? When and how did you make a polymer? Nobody. Congratulations, you fulfilled the second requirement of being a student. You never answer questions. So I'm going to keep it to the end of the lecture, and hopefully you're going to be more bold. By the end, you're going to be willing to share with me when and how did you make a polymer. Okay, so polymers. Polymers, and I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of plastics, and all of you think that plastics are bad and plastics are microplastic and all around and so on. Yes and no, but I have news for you. Plastics are here to stay. Okay, we cannot live without them. We cannot survive without them. They actually change the way we live. And then if you just look at my day in polymers, everything that you see here, it's a polymer. If I take a nap on a memory foam mattress, guess what? That's a polymer. You take a shower, you use a towel, guess what? That's a polymer. You go and use a non-stick pan, that's a polymer. Contact lenses, polymers. Sunglasses, polymers. Here it is, my polymer. I cannot live without it. Actually, just coming here today, I decided to just take a few snapshots, of polymers around, starting from my morning vitamins to my face wash to bus station. All around what you see are polymers. We cannot live without them. They change the way we live. They change the way we function every day. The mascot of NTU is dressed in polymers. I sit here in front of you, and I'm going to take a turn, and what you see me wearing, it's all polymers. The way we live is changed by polymers. And I'm actually going to be very, very, very bold, and I'm going to say that the polymers existed before we existed. And we actually used polymers before we even knew what polymers are. So now, if I'm going to ask you, or if I ask you, think about the Middle East. Let me just convince you that we used polymers before we even knew what polymers are. So if I'm asking you to think about Middle East times, what comes in your mind? Most probably something like this, yeah? I'm assuming, or I'm hoping, that all of you think like medieval time, Games of Thrones, the Vikings, all these kind of things. Well, guess what? The gentlemen drink from a polymer. They are dressed in polymers. Even the facial hair, it's a polymer. They are natural polymers. They are polymers that are made by nature, but they are polymers. Okay? We used polymers before we even knew what polymers are. We made money using polymers before we knew what polymers are. One of the first business that it was recorded making money out of polymers was this one, and excuse me, I don't know how to read it. Wait. So but they basically made all kinds of combs using proteins, organic proteins made from horns and hooves and the tortoise shell, you know. And then decorative objects as well. What you can see, these are objects and old pictures, or pictures of old objects made from natural polymers. We all know natural rubber. We now know what natural rubber is. I'm assuming that some of you that did some chemistry in your high school, you know what a polymer is. Now we know what polymer is. We know what natural rubber is, but we use natural rubber before we knew what natural rubber is, before we knew that the rubber is a polymer. So it's actually this gentleman that actually made lots of money from using natural rubber. He's the one that realized that taking natural rubber and then basically masticating it, the natives were masticating it, the properties change, it becomes more fluid, and you can actually put it in certain shapes. But one of the problems with the natural rubber is that it becomes very sticky when it's hot and when it's very brittle when it's cold. And it was about 10 years later that Goodyear realized that, hey, I'm just taking natural rubber, I mix it a bit with the sulfur, and then it becomes more elastic, it retains the property longer, it survives at colder temperatures, at lower temperatures, higher temperatures. And this is what we now know what's happening. So what we do when we heat rubber with sulfur, what we create what we call sulfur bonds or disulfide bonds, these sulfur-sulfur bonds, and these improve the properties of your natural rubber. And this is a process that even now we do it. It's called vulcanization. I'm pretty sure that maybe the younger audience doesn't know, but the older one, I'm expecting that you at least heard once about vulcanization. And a bit later, and this is how the semi-synthetic polymers were born or were discovered. So what we do when we have a semi-synthetic polymer, we take a polymer that we find in nature, like the natural rubber. We do some chemistry to it. We do some reactions. We change the properties by doing some reactions. Another very famous semi-synthetic polymer is the cellulose or the nitrocellulose. So this was discovered quite some time ago, I would say almost 200 years ago, by a Swiss chemist. That he took, what he did, basically, he took his wife's apron, which is made from cotton, and he put in nitric acid with sulfuric acid. What he saw is that it's dissolving. And then once you dissolve it, you form like a paste, and then you can spread it, and you can make thin film out of it. The nitrocellulose is beautiful. It forms like a transparent film. The problem with nitrocellulose is that it's highly flammable and can actually explode. It's a very, I don't recommend to do it at home, but if you come to NTU and you're gonna be our students, we can try to make nitrocellulose, and it's such a nice thing. You can put it in your hand, light it up, and it basically explodes. Now, and this nitrocellulose was one of the first supporting film that was used for early movies. And then because it's highly flammable, you know how it was in old times, before Netflix, before digital, before streaming. All the movies came on a roll, on a plastic roll, a celluloid roll. And then you project, and it can be very hot. And then it happened a lot, there were a lot of fires and accidents. And later on, in a similar way, the nitrocellulose was replaced with the cellulose acetate, or what we call silk acetate. So this has similar properties with the nitrocellulose. It's the same material that you have in the cellophane. Yes, when you wrap up your food in cellophane, that's what you are using. And actually, the synthetic silk that we use to make gowns, you know, to make dresses, to look pretty, they are made from silk acetate. It's one of the main components in the silk acetate, and is the one that replaced the nitrocellulose in the film industry. And as you can see, it was patented in 1890s. We did not know what polymers were there. So we used all these polymers, we did things with them, we used them around us, but we did not know what polymers are. And actually, the first synthetic polymer, we now know that's a polymer. At that time, we did not know that's a polymer. The first synthetic polymer was synthesized in the early 1900s, and it's the bakelite. For younger people in the audience, there's a telephone. The old telephones were made usually from bakelite. They were very heavy, very resistant. They do not conduct electricity, and they have a very high heat resistance, so they were very much used. Now we know what bakelite was, but at that time, we did not know. So we knew that we just mix the phenol with formaldehyde, and then we get a material, and we get something that we can use. In fact, polymer chemistry and polymer chemistry as we know it now started in 1920 with this gentleman, with the German chemist Hermann Staudinger. And he's the one that actually in the 1920s wrote a paper, and he proposed that the natural rubber, or the rubber, is made, it's a macromolecule, what he called a macromolecule, and is made from some small repeating units that they just connect with each other. And guess what? The community was very conservative, and then this was the reply that he got. There's no such a thing as macromolecule, and he was advised to give up chemistry. It was a few years later, with the development of other techniques, that in 1930, the community and the chemical community accepted that the polymers exist and the concept of macromolecules exists. And that's when we define the polymer as a chain-like molecule that the property or its properties depends on the size and the morphology. And then in the end, he was recognized with, or he was rewarded with a Nobel Prize for chemistry for development in the macromolecular chemistry. So let's move now to today. And how do we see polymers today? How do we make polymers today? But to go there, we start with what's a polymer. So what is a polymer? As I just said a bit earlier, it's a macromolecule. It's a big molecule. Macro means big. And the name comes from Greek. Poly means many. Mer means part. So basically, it's a macromolecule that is formed from many repeating units, many mers, what we call a monomer. They are connected together, usually with a covalent chemical bond. And we represent a polymer chain something like that, most of the time, in a very cartoonistic way. So how do we make polymers? Well, we make polymers by taking monomers and doing a polymerization reaction, and then we obtain a polymer chain. So a monomer has to have at least 2 reactive sites. What do we mean by that? In a very simplistic way, this is how I usually explain to my nephew and my niece. What's a polymer? How do we make a polymer? If you imagine this string, yeah, these beads, chain of beads as a polymer, how do we make it? We take every single bead and we pass a thread through it, yeah? Now, for us to be able to pass a thread through it, we have to have 2 holes, yeah? One in and one out. That's what we mean by 2 reactive sites. We need to have at least 2 reactive sites. If we want to be more inventive and more creative, we can make something that looks like this. It's something that one of my friends made for me, where we use beads, many different kinds of beads, and we connect them in different ways. We have many different holes, and we can make complex, more complex structures but at the end, it's still a polymer. We still have many, many small parts that we connect together and we make a macromolecule. This is, I know it's very simplistic, but basically it tells you what a polymerization reaction is, what a polymer is. How do we classify polymers? One way to classify polymers is basically based on the composition. What do we mean by that? Basically, again, I'm going to come back to this every now and then. Imagine it like, what kind of beads do I use? Do I use red? Do I use blue? How do I connect them? So if I use only one kind of bead, only one kind of monomers, we call it a homopolymer. Homo means the same. So basically, we have a homopolymer. We have a polymer where all the repeating units are the same. We can be more adventurous. We can play around. We can decide to combine different kinds of monomers. We can decide to have different colors of beads. And the way we combine them, we can have alternating copolymers. We call them copolymers because co is like cooperative. So we have two different monomers, two different kinds of beads that we combine together to form a polymer. We can be very, very, very well organized, and we can have like we have here, one blue, one red, one blue, one red. That's what we call an alternating copolymer. We can be wild, and we can have no precise order, and we call them random copolymers. Or we can be, again, very organized, but in a different way. We can have strictly one strand, or we can start strictly with one color, and then we switch to the other color, and we synthesize what we call a block copolymer. Why do we care about that? And why do we go through such a pain to talk about and classify these polymers like that? Well, let me give you an example. I'm hoping that all of you have seen at least once in your life this signal, PP. Yes? It's polypropylene. It's one of the most widely used polymers around. We do recycle it. And how do we make polypropylene? We take a monomer. It's a propylene monomer. It looks something like that. Like you see in the top, the double bond, it's what we call the polymerizing unit. It's almost like one of these beads is going to be a propylene. We do a polymerization reaction. We thread a needle through the double bond, and we make a polypropylene. I'm sure all of you have used at least once in your life polypropylene. It's one of the most common materials used in your traveling bags. It's light, it's hard, it's highly crystalline. Now, if I take polypropylene and I'm just adding one more bead or one different kind of monomer, what we can see there is ethylene. So I have the red beads, and every once in a blue moon, I add a different color bead like ethylene, and I mix it, I polymerize them together, I thread them together. I go from a hard material, crystalline material, to a flexible, to a more elastic material. I'm actually willing to bet that once you go home, if you go home and you look at your shampoo bottle, or if you look at the Clorox bottle, and just turn it around and look at the recycling sign there, at least one bottle in your home is going to be made of polypropylene. So we go from a plastic. What do we mean by plastic? Something that is hard like this, something that we can heat it up and remodel it. And we go to an elastic, something that we can squeeze and it comes back to the original shape. And we do that just by incorporating a different kind of monomer, by incorporating a different color bead. And this is why we go through, this is one of the reasons why we go through such a pain of developing new monomers, new polymerization techniques, new materials. We can classify polymers based on the chain structure. I cannot open this one, but if this would be open, this would be a linear polymer. It's a simple chain of polymer. It's a simple chain of beads. It's going to be a linear polymer. It's exactly as the name says, it's linear. Now, if I take the ends and I connect them, I'm going to have a cyclic polymer. If I want to, I can make a star polymer, or I can make more complex polymer, something like this. It's still beads, it's still monomers that I put together. It's just the way I put together is going to affect the properties. Or I can be a bit more inventive, and I can do a network or a cross-link polymers, and the properties are going to be affected by that. So why, again, we care about that? Let's look at another example. Polyethylene. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard once in your life of polyethylene. We have low-density polyethylene. We have high-density polyethylene. In low-density polyethylene, we have a polymer that looks like that, is very branched. In a high-density polyethylene, we have a strictly linear polymer. The properties of the materials are going to be affected by the structure of the polymer. In very lame terms, in very simplistic analogy, if you wish, you can think of the way I like to think about low-density polyethylene is like a branch of a tree. Yeah? You have many different branches, many smaller dendritic branches that you can just, you take one branch, and that's going to be a low-density polyethylene. Once you start to pile them together, they are not going to pack very tight. Yeah? So you can jump on them, and you can go through them, you can easily manipulate them, or easier manipulate. Now, if you take a tree and you cut all the branches, so you have no branches, you have only the main stem, for example, and you start to put them on top of each other, they are going to be very tightly packed. It's going to be way more difficult for you to move around. That's exactly what's happening in the high-density and low-density polyethylene. And that's why the properties differ so much. But we are going to go now to a miracle of technology. Baby diapers. I'm pretty sure that all the parents in the audience appreciate how easy the life was made by this miracle of technology. The baby diapers, it's a miracle of polymer chemistry and a miracle of technology. In the baby diaper, we usually have anywhere between 10 to 15 different kinds of polymers. Maybe the most important polymers is the filling, the one that absorbs the water, absorbs the liquid, and makes it usable. That's why we use it as in a baby diaper. And it's this one. It's what we call a super absorbent polymer. And the material that is in the baby diaper, it's a sodium salt of the polyacrylic acid. So what is that? Remember, we were talking about polypropylene, and we were talking about these double bonds that are the repeating units. They are the ones that we make a reaction to. So we have monomer 1. We have one monomer, the acrylic acid. We have one polymerizing unit. And then we have a co-monomer where we have 2 of these polymerizing units on it. So what's going to happen with this cross-linker, what we call a cross-linker, we are going to start to polymerize the monomer, the first monomer. And then every once in a blue moon, one of the cross-linker is going to attach and is going to connect 2 of the linear polymers together. And this is very important because it's not going to let the polymer fall apart. Once you put it in water, it's not going to dissolve in water. And we are going to see a little bit later why is that important. So we end up with a polymer that looks somewhere like in the right side or left side. And we take that and it's an acid, and we transform it in a salt. What is a salt is basically exactly like our table salt. We have a positive charge and negative charge. It's a salt. How do we make this? We make the superabsorbent polymers using a free radical polymerization, what we call a free radical polymerization or a chain growth polymerization. So what's happening? We have an initiating molecule. So the first step is going to be the initiation. So in the initiation reaction, what we do, we take a molecule that in the presence of temperature or light, what's going to happen is going to generate an active center. In this case, it's going to be a radical. And this active center is going to initiate a polymerization reaction. It's going to add the first monomer. Again, going back to this, the way I like to think about it, when you thread your beads, you need a needle. A needle makes it easier. The needle is going to be your initiator. It's going to be the one that starts the polymerization reaction. And once you start to add the first monomer, you go and go. You add one after the other, one after the other. And this is what we call a propagation reaction. And then at some point, we decide that it's enough, and we have a termination reaction. Basically, we stop adding beads after a while. And once we make the polymer, we make the salt, we put it in the water, so what's going to happen? What happens when we put table salt, sodium chloride, in water? What happens when we put table salt in water? It dissolves, yes? So when it dissolves, what happens, the anion and the cation fall apart, or they disentangle, or they disbond, and they get surrounded with water molecule. This is what's happening when we put any kind of salt in water. This is how it's dissolving. This is what's going to happen when we put a polymer like this in water. In normal stage, when we don't have water, it's going to be very small. Once we put it in water, the salt, the anion and the cation, they are going to fall apart, and they are going to start to be surrounded by water, and the polymer chains are going to stretch out, and they are going to swell, they are going to increase in the volume, and they are going to absorb the water. Now, do you remember the cross-linker that we had there? Well, the cross-linker does not let the polymer chains to fall apart, keeps the polymer chains together and does not fall apart. If we would not have the cross-linker, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to be basically once we put the polymer in water, it's just going to dissolve in the water. And this is what we don't want to do. Now, another polymer that we use, a chain growth polymer that we use a lot in everyday life, is super glue. So every time you use super glue, you make a polymer. You are a polymer chemist. Super glue was first used in the Vietnam War to seal the wounds. It was sprayed on open wounds, and then once it's touching the water and the wound and our body, we have molecules on the surface of our body that initiate the polymerization, forms a film, a polymer film that stops the bleeding. And super glue is still used a lot in cosmetic surgeries because it allows us to bring the wound, the cut wounds together. We put a layer of super glue on it, keeps the skin together, the wound starts to heal, and then we have to the wound heals. Other polymers, when you go to dentists, when you paint and you use acrylic paint, that's what you do. You use monomers that polymerize and then sets the color inside. If you go to the dentist, what the dentist does when it puts a filling in your tooth, puts a monomer inside, uses the light to initiate the polymerization, and you form a polymer. Now, there are other parts of the diaper that are made like that, but I'm going to go on to the next one, which I'm pretty sure you also heard about. It's nylon. Nylon is 6,6, falls in a second big family of polymers, what we call a step growth polymers, or step growth polymerization. And then in the step growth polymerization, we have two monomers. We usually have two monomers. They do have both of them at least two reactive sites, and they come together and they form first dimer, trimer, tetramer, and so on. So the polymerization mechanism is slightly different. One of the most famous polymer made by step growth polymerization is nylon. And the first use of nylon was actually in the toothbrush. So the first time the nylons were synthesized in US at DuPont, and it was the first use was in toothbrushes. And then it got a lot of use in the especially in the Second World War. And it was actually pulled out of the market from the tights and so on, and it was used in the parachutes in the Army. Another polymer that we use a lot, that is we synthesize is using step growth polymerization, is the Kevlar. It's a small difference. We go from having an alkyl chain, what we call a linear chain, to having an aromatic ring there. And it's the same kind of polymer. We just change the thing that we have in between the amide bonds. And we go from an elastic, from nylon, from the one that we use in our ties, to a material that is very strong. Kevlar is the material that is used in the bulletproof vest. We just change a little bit the structure of the aromatic ring. We have a kink in the monomer, and then we synthesize a different kind of polymer that we use a lot. It's called the Nomex. Is the polymer, is the materials that we have that the firefighters use. The fireproof materials, it's Nomex. It's a polymer that we synthesize using step growth polymerization. Polyethylene terephthalate, the pet butter. This, it's a polymer that we make using the step growth polymerization. Polycarbonates, the window shields, the aeroplane windows are made from polycarbonate. Why do we like them? They are light, they are resistant, they save, they make our life safer, and we fly cheaper because of that. Another polymer, the two-component glue. Whenever you use a two-component glue, you know these two tubes that you squeeze and you mix together and you glue things together? Congratulations, you make a polymer when you use that, when you do that. And this is how it looks. And I'm going to finish, promise I have a few more minutes. And I'm going to finish with the natural polymers. We spoke about natural rubber. We spoke about, I told you a little bit about the cellulose, the nitrocellulose acetate. I'm just going to throw a few more things in here. The biologists are going to tell you the DNA is special. From my point of view as a polymer chemist, DNA is nothing else but a polymer. DNA, it's a polymer where we have 4 different monomers that come together. The way we connect them carries the genetic information, but the DNA is nothing else but a polymer. Guess what? Proteins. When you have a protein shake, it's nothing else but a polymer. Enzymes are proteins. Enzymes are polymers. Cotton, it's a natural polymer, but it's a polymer. These are polymers that are perfected and made by nature, but they are polymers. Make no mistake, they are polymers. And I'm going to finish here. I hope you got a feeling that the world around us is marvelous, and I hope I convinced you, or I gave you a little bit of a feeling. The polymers are all around us. We cannot live without them, but we have to be responsible. The polymers make our life easy, but the polymers complicate our life. So please remember to reduce, recycle, reuse. And thank you for coming here. I'm happy to take any questions. And please feel free to scan the QR code for your prize. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm coming back to who wants this tumbler? Who tells me a polymer that they made in their life? First come, first serve. Who wants it? Who made the polymer? When and how? Nobody wants it. I have a tumbler as a gift, as a prize for the one that can tell me how and when you made a polymer. Come on, parents, be more bold than the kids. Congratulations, again you fulfilled the next requirement of being a student at NTU. I look forward to see you later. If you have any questions, feel free to come down and tell me how you make a polymer, and I'm going to give you the tumbler. It's made of polymers. I'll see you around later, guys. Do drop by our booth at the CCEB. No, it is. So how do you make a polymer? When did you make a polymer? Who wants it? Ah, but I want it every day, at home. Frying, no, you don't make a polymer. Come on, I just told you a few examples. That's a denaturation of protein. It's not so much of a polymerization. Do you use gel nail polish? That's a polymerization reaction. Can I help you? Sure. Actually, it's. I think in NTU you find anything and everything. You know, we have also very strong community or a big part of our faculty body that does fundamental research or basic research, what you would call it. But we also have a big number, actually I would say even more than the fundamental research, and that do really apply synthesis in, like for example, going from batteries to supercapacitors to like there is somebody who does like materials that you can.
I got STEM. I got STEM.
How?
Scan right away.
Great.
Then the tour will come soon. Then I scan on the tour.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Yes.
I'll wait. Then the tour is coming.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. So, and then we have, for example, somebody who does some materials that you can coat the wood to make it flame retard, so it doesn't burn. We also have people that make materials for coating cars, you know, like polymers, steel polymers. You know, when you paint your car, you make a polymer and things like that, you know. So we do have, it goes, these are just few things that come to my mind, and we have also biologists, you know, like in drug delivery and drug discovery and things like that. And then we have in our school, we have somebody who does, because now it's fashionable, the mRNA vaccines, you know, and things like that. So we do, basically you find anything you wish to do, and you get to explore everything you wish. Sure.
Why would you on purposely make a random polymer?
Yes.
You would on purpose random?
Yes.
Why?
Because the properties, so, you know, for example, in polypropylene, yeah, a very well organized or very strictly isotactic polymer is going to be very hard. Yeah, it's almost like actually, I think that the chairs are made from polypropylene, so that's hard, and then you cannot apply it or use it in something that is flexible like that. So by making a random copolymer, you disturb this organization. So you go from a plastic to an elastic, from a hard material to a softer material. So depending on what your applications are, most of the polymers that we use around are random copolymers.
For it to be amorphous, right?
Yes, one of the things can be amorphous, yes. You're welcome. Sure. So it's almost like, I have two strands. Yeah, I think that I have one. I know I love these ones. I shouldn't break them. Yes, I think so. There are some seeds of some plant. Anyways, so imagine that you have them like this. If I have two, and depending if I put them in a, for example, the superabsorbent polymer, if I put them in water, they're just going to dissolve. They're going to fall apart. But if I connect one here and then I connect another one, so if I cross-link it, if from point to point I glue them together, you need to add an extra thing, and like this cross-linking, this comonomer that has two units, So you need to cross-link it on purpose. Otherwise, it's going to fall apart. Okay, so that's a very good point. Depends on the pH. It may absorb or not. It may differ how much water it absorbs. But usually the polymer that we use in diapers, for example, the superabsorbent polymers are such tuned that usually the urine pH is around 5.5 to 6, so close to neutral. So they are such tuned and such developed that it absorbs as much as possible water, But obviously you can change the structure of the polymer if you want. For example, one of the things that it's spoke about, to develop a polymer that looks like that, you can put on the surface, like when you have oil spills, on the sea, that you put it absorbs oil and not water. So that's a different kind of a polymer. The structure of the polymer is going to be different, but the principle of how it absorbs the oil and not the water is the same. How would you define a matrix? It is a 3D space, so it's not going to be like a 2D, So it's going to be all amorphous and all random, This is one of the pain that most of the chemists, small molecule chemists can. Yes. Yeah, the epoxy resin is what we call network. Yeah, and it's a thermoset and a network. And then in an epoxy resin, we have a very high degree of cross-linking. In a superabsorbent polymer, the degree of linking is way smaller because we want the polymer to be able to relax, to absorb the water without falling apart. If it's an epoxy resin, it's very, very tightly cross-linked, so it cannot expand. Yeah. Yes, you will have to take physics, either chemical engineering, either in chemistry. You will have to take some physics. It's not at the level at the same level like if you study physics, but you will have to take some physics. I have to say that, so I'm going to be honest, I'm part of the chemistry part, not the engineering part, the science part. I think one of the requirements is physics, but it's not a must. It's a good idea, or it's good if you have some physics background, because it makes it easier for you to transition into the university life. Yeah, that's what we call polymer physics. So that's I do, and what we do in my lab, or part of what we do in my lab, it's basically polymer synthesis. So we basically make the polymers, and we go and say, well, this is how we make it, and then we give it to the physicists, and We tell us what are their properties, you know, the modulus, the strength, the elasticity, and all these kind of things. Yeah. So me personally, we do polymers just for fun, you know. So our main research focus is organic chemistry, and then we do molecular design. So we do polymers. I'm going to be honest. I make molecules because they are beautiful. We make molecules because they are beautiful and because they are challenging, you know. And then once we make them, we go and look at the properties. And we do make polymers because I find polymers fascinating, you know, and that's why we make polymers. My group focuses on what we call polymer design, on monomer design. So we design new monomers to address certain properties. So for example, one of our materials, one of the polymers that we synthesize is used in solar cells, you know. So it's, we play around, to be honest. Yes. No, so adding fillers, so there are different ways of doing it. Yeah? You can make blends. Yeah, in blends, basically, you just mix different kinds of polymers without connecting them, without having any kind of bonds. Yeah? Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, but what we do, we go to the fundamental, to the chemistry. So what we do, we synthesize and we modify the monomers to address the properties. Because the blends, as you correctly pointed, the blends are after you make the polymer, you know? Yes, yes. I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you mean work with this kind of things? So, I can tell you more. I can tell you also about the chemical engineering because I do know a bit. So one of the beauty of our school is that we have the chemical sciences, you know, the fundamental chemistry, and the engineers in the same school. So this also gives you the possibility, so you can focus and major in chemical sciences, so in chemistry, what you know as chemistry, yeah? And then, because you are in the same school with the chemical engineers, it allows you to actually talk with the chemical engineers, yeah? And then to collaborate and to understand the chemical engineers, the engineering part of chemistry as well. So in terms of research, we have a lot of things. You know, going from, so we have groups that do like analytical chemistry. We talk about the air pollution, water pollution, all these kind of things, water purification, air purification. We have people that do catalysis, basically development of catalysis. We have people that we do polymers, but I would not call myself a polymer chemist, so we play around with polymers. But we do have people that do polymers, you know, that this is all their things, you know, they develop new polymerization techniques, you know, for example. We do have people that do organometallic chemistry. We have people that do biochemistry, and this is the chemistry side. We have at the chemical engineering side, we have people that do, so in the engineering, basically, do you guys have a good understanding what's the difference between chemistry and chemical engineering? So basically, chemistry, this is how I see it. I'm a chemist, and keep in mind I'm very biased towards chemistry, okay? So it's not that I don't like chemical engineers, but I'm biased towards what I like to do. So as a chemist, I do the things, you know, we do them at the lab scale. We investigate, we discover the new materials. The chemical engineers come to the chemist and tell me, hey, you've made this good material, it has these properties. Can we take it to the scale, large scale production? Can we take it to the public, you know? And how do we transform basically the small scale to the big scale? Yeah. So that's one of the things and then in the chemical engineers, we have bioengineering, the biotechnology. So one of the things, for example, it is like modifying the bacteria or enzymes to do a certain reaction. and then designing the bioreactors. We have people that do also materials like engineering the materials for solar cells. And then we have somebody who's dealing with trying to actually find, we have somebody that does catalysis for degrading PET bottles. We have somebody who does biocatalysis, basically modifying enzymes to degrade polystyrene polymer. So we have quite a diverse and very international environment, you know. So if you want to be exposed to basically step in a school where you feel like you are abroad, please do come to us. You know, we have a very, very international body of students and faculties that challenges. In a way, to be honest, it can be challenging, but I think in a good way. You know, it can be challenges you to discover other cultures and to belong to a different, you know, to be able to work with different people. Yes. Again, I'm going to be very biased. So let's put it like this. On the scale of evolution or whatever you wanted, we are at the bottom of the food chain. Yeah, so we are the one that develop the materials. We are the one that do the fundamental thing. The material scientists, they usually take the science that is there, the chemistry that is there, and then they use it to develop materials, to basically apply the materials that are synthesized, you know. So I would say if in very, and then keep, again, I feel like I'm excusing myself all the time. I'm a chemist, you know. From my point of view, the material scientists are somewhere between the chemists and physicists. You know, they are neither chemists, they are neither physicists, but they understand a bit of both, you know, so they can link very nicely these two fields, you know, that they can take the materials that the chemists do and use it, working together with the physicists to apply the materials. I think you should be okay. I mean, look, the reality is that most of the sciences, you need to know a little bit of physics. Even as a chemist, it's not going to be very intensive. I can tell you from my experience, yeah, that physics for chemists and chemical engineering is not very complicated. You study physics from the point of view of chemistry, you know. It's just that you will have to. You have to. You cannot be a chemist without knowing physics. And a little bit of physics. Sadly, I think that physicists should not be physicists without knowing chemistry, but it doesn't work that way, you know. So. Well, I think both of them are very. You can get into chemical engineering without physics. You can. My suggestion is to try to before because you are local, yes? You are local. You are Singaporean. So you are also going to do the NS, yeah? So there's going to be another thing that is going to put a break in your, between 2 years, it's a long time. And it's going to feel like, oh my God, do I know how to study anymore, you know? And I don't remember anything anymore. Which is a myth, you know. You immediately snap into it. But my suggestion is during your NS, you have a lot of spare time. I heard this. This is what my students tell me. You know, that you have dead times, yes. I don't think you should overdo it. I really don't think you should overdo it. But if you spend a bit of time to try to catch up a bit with the basic physics, it would be good and helpful for you. Okay. You're welcome. Sure. It depends which part. Which one, the chemical engineering or the chemistry part? I'm an organic chemist, so again, I'm very biased. It's not as much as in chemistry. You will have to study, but if I remember right, there are like only 1 or 2 classes of organic chemistry, while if you do chemistry, it's going to be one of your core modules, you know. So if you want to do organic chemistry, you have to come to chemistry, not chemical engineering. Oh, it's complicated. they made it complicated in the last few years. So we do have, you have, I don't exactly remember the ratios, but you have a big numbers of what we call core classes in chemistry. So this goes anywhere from analytical to inorganic, organic, physical chemistry, organometallic chemistry. So those are the core modules. You cannot be a chemist without doing that. You know, these are minimal. But in the first 2 years, there are a lot what they call ICC. It's, oh my God, how is it? It's inter something core classes. You know, it's yeah, some interdisciplinary co-curriculum something. You know. So that's basically every single student in NTU has to take those classes. So that goes from data analysis to healthcare to programming, you know. So it's sort of like a general knowledge, you know. And then what we call, and then you have what we used to call major prescribed elective. Now they are called BDEs. It's broadening and deepening elective or something like that. So that's basically where you have a lot of freedom what you want to do. Do you want to, for example, if you're a chemist, you might want to explore more into biology or more into chemical engineering. So that's when you can go and say, hey, can I take a class from even philosophy? You know, I had students that actually I encourage them. I encourage all my students to go and explore other things, you know, because you're a chemist, you're going to get a core class is going to be there, or the chemical engineer. But I think a university, that's my point of view. So some of my colleagues might not agree with me, okay? So my point of view is that the university is the time when you explore who you are and explore what you like, to see what you want to do in your life, what you enjoy. It's, you know that saying that do something that you like and you don't have to work a day in your life, you know? So in my opinion, university is the time to find who you are, what you like, and more important than what you like, what you don't like, you know. And then to explore, to also have an understanding, maybe English literature, maybe philosophy, maybe arts and design, or things like that, you know. And this is what the BDE allows you to do, and to go and explore other parts of the university. So each of them, I don't exactly remember the ratio, but I think the core classes are 60%, something like that, and then the ICC, the interdisciplinary co-curricular things are 20, and then the BDE another 20, something like that. I think this is a move all over the world, you know. I mean, that's a different, the only difference is Europe has a very unique system that doesn't really apply here, you know. So, but another thing that we have, and I know the NUS also has, but I think it's way more, it's stronger for us. In NTU, we do encourage and we want anywhere between 70 and 80% of our students go abroad on an exchange. And I personally am, I mean, obviously I'm not local, you know, and I left, I'm a chemist. I grew up in Romania, and I left Romania more than 20 years ago, so I've done all my undergrad and masters in Romania, and then I went to Germany, Switzerland, US, Poland, back to Switzerland, and now I'm here, you know, so it's, sorry? Yes, yes. And as an undergrad, you can also attend conferences if you want. If you join, so as an undergrad, you can also join a group to what we call, you can do Eureka research, you know, that's undergrad research experience, or a lot of our students do what we call volunteer research. Basically, what happens, I have a lot of undergrads like that, they come and knock, Prof, I want to work in the lab, you know, because this is what it's like. Prof, you know, if Japan is very sweet, you know, Prof, can I come and work in your lab? And then usually it's based on the first come, first serve, you know, because we also have a limit. I have from year 1 to year 4. So it's up to you. And this is why I'm saying that I think the undergrad is the time to explore what you like and what you don't like. And my suggestion is for all the students that come to my lab, come one semester to my lab, go to another lab, go and see what's everything about. You don't know what you like or what you don't like until you experience it. Because you like organic chemistry. Huh? I cannot tell you how many times I hear this in interviews with undergrad, organic chemistry, and then by the time they reach year 2, it's like, heck, I have to take organic chemistry. Why do I have to take organic chemistry, No worries.
When they switch from love to hate, right? What do they like?
I think, look, I'm an organic chemist, yeah? And organic chemistry was my weakest subject when I was an undergrad. My first love was physical chemistry, like the kinetics, thermodynamics. But because it was one of my weakest subjects, I spent time with it. And then my opinion is that organic chemistry is the more you know, the more you like it. That's my opinion, And organic chemistry, why I think our students don't like it and where the switch happens, it's a lot of information. And it's a lot of, I think that it's a lot of, you have to juggle. It almost is like when you juggle, you have a lot of balls in the air, And then and I personally think there's a little bit of impatience with our students that you have to understand, and you have to get to the point where you have to understand that it takes a little bit of practice until you start to be able to handle all the balls in the air, And this is where the frustration comes in, But organic chemistry, it's I personally, that's what I think, yeah. Organic chemistry is just like a lot of pieces of puzzles that, depending on how you put them together, you get a different image. That's my opinion. So this is another thing, that if you do organic chemistry, again, I'm biased. If you do organic chemistry, you have to know analytical chemistry, you have to know spectroscopy, you have to know spectrometry, you have to know a lot of things, Yes, sorry. HPLC. NMR, yes. There's no organic chemistry without NMR. There's no organic chemistry without NMR. So it's, look, if I'm old, I could be your mom, yeah? So I'm gonna just, I usually don't like to give advices, but before you go to the university, this is one single advice that I'm gonna give you. Try to enjoy it. And try to stop being worried about which grade you get and so on, but start to discover who you are. It's the time where, and then, again, an advice that is very controversial that I tell to my students, don't do anything in the summer holidays. Don't go and volunteer if you can afford, and if your parents can afford, that you don't have to work. Don't do anything. Once you graduate, you're going to start working, you're going to have kids, you're going to have, holiday is going to be, you're never going to have that free time to go and learn how to cook, go and learn how to dance, go and learn how to, I don't know, climb and things like that. You have your entire life to work all your life. That's my opinion. And nobody agrees with me. None of my colleagues agrees with me. Yes. Sure. For you, I do chemistry because it's fun. I'm a basic chemist. For the entire world, I try to save the world. Sure. That's very simple. See, my first love when I was before the university was mathematics. If you talk with my friends before I went to the university, they would have they tell you, Ella for sure is some mathematician, informatics, something. That was my first love, and then it was physics. And chemistry was sort of like something that I found very fun. It was never really like something that I ever considered to do. What tipped the scale for me for not going to physics or mathematics was the fact that chemistry is way more applied. You get to do way more things with your hands, with your everyday life. You know, that's what tipped the scale for me. You know, to me, mathematics to these days, though I don't know mathematics anymore, to these days, I think that mathematics is pure beauty. There's nothing more beautiful than mathematics, you know. But to me, mathematics was too much me and my paper, a piece of paper and a pencil, and nothing much beyond that. To me, chemistry, as I said, it's fun. And I'm going to say something that my biologist colleagues and my physicist colleagues are not going to agree. I think there is no science that changed the way we live as much as chemistry. You can go from drugs to materials to everything. Everything is chemistry. So this is why I'm a synthetic chemist. I'm the one that does the smelly things, the one that, you know, that does colors and explosions. And I had fires and explosions in my life in the lab, you know, because this is part of what we do. And I'm a synthetic chemist, and my students are synthetic chemists because we love doing things with our hands, you know. And my nephew is considering to become, so my nephew is 16 years old, and then this is where, am I an engineer? Do I want to go to science or engineer, you know? And then I think he's never going to be a scientist. I think he's an engineer through and through, you know. But I think being a chemist it's pure creation. The fact that you can write a piece, that's why I'm a synthetic chemist, that's why I'm an organic chemist. The fact that I can write a molecule on a piece of paper, you know, and it's here on a piece of paper, and then I can go to the lab, and a few months later, I can come and say, I've made it, and nobody else made it ever in the world. To me, that's power. It's almost like being God. We do have theoretical chemists. As a chemist, so if you study chemistry, you have to, as an undergrad, there is a minimum. So I teach organic chemistry, polymer chemistry, and I'm in charge of the teaching lab as well, the organic chemistry part of the teaching lab. In my opinion, you cannot be a chemist without doing experimental work. You need to be able to do things in the lab. You might choose to be a theoretical chemist, which basically you are in front of the computer and do the things, yeah, computational chemistry. But I call that wannabe chemist, you know. But please don't say this to my colleagues. It's going to be offensive, you know. But I think it's extremely important. Don't get me wrong. I think it's extremely, extremely important. But I like the dirty part of chemistry, if you wish. But this doesn't mean that one is better than the other. This is why you need to go to explore what you like. Do you want to be a theoretical chemist? Do you want to be a synthetic chemist? There's nothing wrong. This is a thing that it's nothing wrong to do organic chemistry and say, heck, it's not for me. It's perfectly okay. Not everybody has to be an organic chemist. Not everybody has to be an analytical chemist. You're welcome. Oh, they are going to tell you that they are better than us, but they are not. Don't believe them. Please don't believe them. They are just wannabe. Sorry, you don't need to raise your hand. Sure. You're welcome. See you.